From as far back as anyone can remember, from the invention of the game of football itself, boys live for the chance to become football heroes on Friday night. But because of racial segregation, black and white boys in the South played their games on separate fields. Whole generations of athletes grew into men and then into old men without ever knowing what competition with one another would be like. Such were the days. The Manatee River serves to separate the towns of Bradenton and Palmetto. It is only 1,764 feet wide where the Green Bridge crosses it, but that is enough to make a border. Being from north of the river has always described more than a geographical place. Once, it also included time. During the 50s and the 60s, the Manatee River separated the only black high school in the county from two of the three white ones, including the oldest and most influential, Manatee High. For generations, Manatee High School was considered the school of record for most white Manatee County residents. There was only one high school for black children in Manatee County during segregation, and it was situated north of the river in Palmetto. Lincoln Memorial High School was the school for all African Americans in Manatee County until 1969. The 1950s and the 1960s were decades of great change in this country. After the United States Supreme Court ruled that separate but equal was inherently unequal and struck down segregation laws in the landmark case of Brown versus the Topeka Board of Education in 1954. School boards all across the South were put on notice that public schools were expected to be integrated with all deliberate speed. This timeline for action, it turned out, meant dramatically different things to different people, mostly depending on whether you were black or white in the South. A young black girl, hearing of the Brown decision, believed she needed to begin preparing to go to school with white children the next school year. But all deliberate speed turned out to mean as slow as possible. It was not until the very end of the 1960s that racial mixing began in earnest in public facilities throughout most of the South. And what that usually meant was that black children were required to leave their community schools and be integrated into previously all-white schools. It was a migration made no less difficult simply because long distances were not involved. Some saw the whole thing as revolutionary, others as the long overdue righting of America's worst wrong, its original sin. Whatever belief one had, it was made more difficult because it required the blending of cultures within the classrooms and on the playing fields of America's schools. One of the most historic chapters of this country's life was left in the hands of ordinary people to figure out. This is the story about some who were placed squarely in the middle of that history.
Way started coaching at Lincoln in 1955. First, they had another coach there named Hepburn. We had coached together in college at Florida A&M. Hepburn left, and then I worked with another coach named Berean. And then he left, so it was left entirely up to me to be the head coach. We worked together there for 2 years before I became head coach at Lincoln. Game day at Lincoln, it really started on Thursday. Everybody would start getting prepared to go out and play the game. We had cheerleaders, prep squad, the people in the community, and all those would form a group. They'd have little parties or have little benefits things so the boys could come by, probably get a sandwich or something like that for entertainment to try to help them keep their mind on what they were going to do. Well, at Lincoln, most of our guys, as we know, was from farm areas. And I had to switch that farm area to an athletic, let them understand that they could play the game as well as anybody else could play it. And a whole lot of things I would say to them when we walked in to get them ready to play the game. A lot of time I'll tell them you got to be hostile, agile, and mobile. You ask no quarter, you give no quarter. You kill a mosquito with an axe. This would kind of help we get them up to go out. Then at Lincoln we had a tunnel, and we'd walk through that tunnel a lot of times singing Trojan Tunnel, is to get their mind off of the things that's in the streets or anything else that they were thinking about, just to get their mind actually on football and what we're going to do.
I'm so glad. I think that one of the best things that happened is when they built this highway, US 41 here, they had to build a tunnel so that we'd have access from the school out to our field. So this tunnel, it created an ambience that you could not have done otherwise. Plus, it created a torture chamber for us because Coach Shannon, Coach Cromartie, and Coach McMillan and all of they tortured us on this hill here. This hill here was one of the things that was used to get us in shape and keep us in shape. We had to crab up that hill, we had to crab down that hill, and I'm telling you, we had to do it, and we had to be busy with it. And Coach Shannon, he didn't give no slack to anybody. He didn't give any slack even to his son, Ronald Shannon, and those guys. So nobody was spared. So it really, this highway, when they put it in, was a great thing that was done for Lincoln in terms of for our program, our athletic program, and creating this, because it did something, it inspired in many ways.
We had a hill run through Lincoln. That was our sled. We'd yoga up and yoga down. Then we had a canal that ran through Lincoln. This was one of the things that we would use to get the strength of the defense and the strength of the offense. We'd put the defense back to the canal and the offense front to the canal. The defense better not let the offense go in the canal, and the offense better go in the canal. So this was one of our strengths, and this was one of our building machines. We didn't have a sled. From not having a sled, the city had put, or the county, one or the other, had put a road through it, and we had a tunnel. And in that tunnel on both sides of it, we had a hill. To get our legs strong, we'd yoga up the hill and yoga back down the hill. That was our sled. And this was one of our strengths that we had.
We came through, sometimes we come through singing, Wade in the Water. We'd come through singing a couple other songs. And Coach Shannon, of course, they come through, and then Coach Shannon had his other materials that he utilized when we came to deal with this, and our team captains, of course. So it was always pretty much the same thing. We'd come through the tunnel, we walked through, because you couldn't come through running because of the surface, and we had on cleats. So we'd come through the tunnel, and we'd get ready to go out here, and we'd do our exercise, our warm-ups, and we did it. We also did our practices out here, too. We had a field over here where we also practiced. So everything was kind of compact.
Well, we played a whole lot of schools. The schools that we played Lakeland, we played Tampa, we played Bartow, we played Hand City, we played St. Petersburg, we went down to Fort Myers. And some of the rougher games that we played was in Bartow, Lakeland, or Lake Wales. And because by being all black, we all were doing the same thing. It's speed, 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 and who's going to catch who and who had the dominant speed.
I played 3 years.
3 years, and during that 3-year period, you only lost one game.
No, we lost more than one game, but
Okay.
my freshman year we lost one game.
Okay. You remember how many you lost during that 3 years?
No, I don't. We didn't lose too many. We may have lost in my 3 years at playing there. We may have lost. If we lost 3 games, you know, 3, 4 max.
Okay.
But I would say probably maybe 2 to 4 games. Oh man, a charge that you really can't describe. You have to really experience it. You know, it's not quite like, say, the Super Bowl, but it was the beginning, you know, and then being here looking at that, I can see the images of the guys coming through, you know, singing the song, wade in the water, wade in the water, you know, I mean, the different, you know, things. And then we used to, on the bus, and we was riding, we'd be going to the games, and we did our prayers and we sang our prayers. It was an emotional thing. We'd do a song, there was a prayer called, you know, Our Father, and we'd actually sing it. And man, I'm telling you, it did something for us. We did go, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed will be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we'd sing that song. And those are powerful things back then. You know.
Did I say the right things in the dressing room? Did I let them understand that the team that comes in is the same as you? They put your clothes on just like you put your clothes on. So you're not supposed to be afraid. Did I say the things that need to be said in order for him to be hostile, agile, and mobile and do the things that he's supposed to do?
Well, for one thing, it was a feeling of pride, you know, and of course, of any sports, it deals with emotion. And with emotion, and I don't care what anybody say, in sports, you know, emotion is a big part of the game. And if you notice, in most times when you play a game and you're playing at home, that's why they say most time you have home field advantage, where it does play a part. But that's emotions, the psychological part of it. You're home, you know, and nobody's supposed to come and beat you at home. And so in many instances here, didn't many people beat us here. It was, you had to bring it on.
Well, at Lincoln, I think I was everybody's father, especially all the fellas. I had a curfew, everybody go home at 10 o'clock at night and go to bed. In order for them to be to bed, I would get in my car and ride around and be sure that they were in the bed. And if any of them was having a problem, then they would call on me to come and help solve the problem. I remember once I had about 4 or 5 guys picked up one night, and the police had them in jail. This police name was Chief Redmond during this time. And he called me and told me that he had a couple of my boys in jail. He'd give them to me if I come down and see about them. So I went down to see about them, and he said, well, you can take them. I said, no, not just like that. I can't take them out just like that. So I went back outside and got my paddle, and I paddled them out the door. I said, now I can take them. So I put them in the car and carried each one of them home and told them that they was breaking curfew. And we had something, a punishment that the team would give. We all called it running the gauntlet. You had to get in there, and everybody would get a shot at you to tackle you or to kind of rough you up. So this was kind of a guide that we would use so the guys would stay home and go to bed on time.
Yeah, I will tell you the biggest memory I have of this field, my freshman year, when I came back, I was a farm labor, migrant farm labor, and we went up north every year, and I came back. And the first day I got back, we were practicing on this field over here, and Coach Shannon put us to work. It wasn't no workout training program, you know, where you had to do this year round, and if you didn't play. No. because I had been dealing with the problem with Coach Shannon even from elementary school. In my 6th grade year, I was like about 190 pounds, and the schools were connected actually. So Coach Shannon, you know, he was like a predator. You know, he'd be walking around with his hand behind his back, and, you know, and you'd be walking, and if you passed him and you feel something, pow, you know, and he turn on and see you on that football field, big boy, you know. And so I got tired of that. So I came back, and when we got back, the next day he had us out there practicing. And of course, it was all in good though, because back then we had a tough kind of love here, you know, with the coaches. They weren't just coaches, you know, they were deans, they were teachers, they were everything, you know. So it all tied in, and so, you know, you had to stay in line. And basically that's what it's all about, is the whole pure excitement of everything. But my freshman year, I practiced with the varsity, with the Coach Shannon team, and it's Coach Clemens. They started a freshman team. So on Tuesdays, I go down and play with the freshman team. So we were playing a game, and of course I was pretty rugged, I guess, and reckless. And I was playing defensive end, defensive tackle. And I came in on the play, and I was killing them, man. And I crashed in there, and I hit the guy, you know, and I didn't just, you know, I was using Willie Jones' helmet. He had the helmet that flipped up. And I should have had my own helmet, I probably would, but I went in and I hit the guy, and the next thing I know, man, I'm dizzy and bleeding. I had a gold teeth that I had worked, you know, up there picking tomatoes and taters, you know, up there, and had a gold teeth. So I used to walk in class every day, you know, and I'd be like styling. And I had classmates, you know, like Linda Cons and Danny Harris, because Danny was on the team with us. And Linda was always kind of like a agitator, you know, and so we'd walk in, and Miss Hall was one of our teachers, and they'd talk. So I'd walk in and I'd be grinning. So I got my teeth knocked out, my gold teeth, you know. So the next day I walk in class, and I didn't walk in grinning, you know. I walked in and they were brutal. So when I walked into class, everybody bust out laughing. Linda Kahn was the ringleader, you know. So it looked back on it, was real funny. But I went out on that field and I looked for my gold teeth. I never found it. But so it's probably still out there on that field. But that game I remember more than anything, because that guy got my teeth knocked out.
First, you got to learn to be a good citizen. My thing was back during that day, you respect your parents. That's the beginning. You obey your parents and do what you're supposed to do. Then anybody was older than you respect that person. And the key to all of it, you go to church and learn about God, because He makes the difference in your life. And I taught that ever since I've been coaching. You put God first in your life, and everything else falls in place.
When I was here at Lincoln, I'm telling you now, what I learned here at Lincoln carried me throughout my whole football career. What I learned here, the attitude that I picked up, the work ethics, I learned it right here on this field, on that tortuous hill there. I learned it from Coach Shannon, Coach Clemens, Coach Cremati, Coach McMillan, Coach Sanders, all those people. I learned as good a football here as I learned when I went to the pros. And in many cases, when I went to college, we had a coach came in by the name of Jim Williams, who built the powerhouse Blake up in Tampa. And he taught me some things, you know, but it all tied in. They all came from the same old school principles. So those things were critical in my development and my continuation of striving for excellence.
Some of the better players that I played and coached over there, I go back, I had a boy called Eugene Hard, we call him Yak Yak, because he ran the ball and talked. And I had Neil Nelson. Incidentally, my son was my quarterback, and he stayed where I stayed, so that meant he would do what I say do. And I coached Henry Lawrence, I coached Wade Bellamy. Those guys went on to play extra ball. I coached Raymond Bellamy, he's the first black to go to Miami University in that school. So we had a whole lot of talent over there. Raymond Barnes, Neil Nelson, called Neil Nelson Chip. He's a football player and a basketball player. I used to laugh at him because he could drop the basketball and kick 2 points. So we just had all kind of talent over there.
Well, Lincoln had a tradition, and even today, as you see, you see great players coming out of this whole area now. And at one point in Manatee County, of course, before integration, all of those, especially the black players, had to come through Lincoln. So you had a multitude of talent, and then of course down Sarasota, you had Booker down there. You had great players. You had the Howard Porters down there. You had the Chip Nelsons, the Edgy Harts, the Willie Jones, the Raymond Bellamy, who actually was the first black high school athlete to sign a scholarship at a major Southern university. And I was a freshman when he was a senior, and he was one of my inspirations actually, because you mirrored your position. I played guard, and I played tight end, and I played defensive end, but Raymond Bellamy was a wide receiver, and back then you played receiver, you played wide and tight, and he played defensive end, and he was a phenomenal defensive end. So I used to line up, and I had to block him, and I was at tackle, and he had a hammer that you would not be. He had me buzzing. I mean, I would be so dizzy, and Raymond would always come back, because I didn't have sense enough to back off, and try to go easy. I'd give it everything I got every play. So Raymond used to always come back and tell me, so you're going to be all right. So you're going to be a good player. You're going to be, and he always gave that inspiration, and he's that way today. I tell you, coming through this tunnel, and initially, because the crowd usually get there much earlier, so you hear the noise, you hear the roaring. It's like, you wonder how the gladiators felt back in the Roman days when they come through and they're getting ready to go into the tunnel, into their stadium, to the Coliseum, to do battle. It's like gladiators. That's what we felt like.
The thing about the first year, about 1969, is that it brought people together, black and white, who had never been together in their lives. You can't just put them together. They have to put themselves together, and that's what they did. It wasn't a word, but they did tell us we was phasing Lincoln out. So we was going to have to come over with a Manatee. So practically the whole entire team during that time came to Manatee. We had some to go to Parramatta, some to go to Southeast, but majority of them came over here.
At the time, we didn't want that to happen, but of course at the time we didn't know what else to do. Because that's what we're supposed to do. But what actually wanted to go to Parramatta High, because they had a tradition over there of winning. And of course, we had some of the guys that had grown up with in elementary school, and many of them had gone to Parramatta, and they were playing. They were stars over there. And of course, they were about winning over there. And but of course, we weren't able to go there. We had to go to Manatee. No, I wasn't nervous about going. It was just an anticipation. I wasn't afraid about going to school with white kids, because growing up as a migrant farm worker, I started kindergarten in white school. So most of my, up to like 7th grade, I had done that. So that wasn't a thing that I had to adjust to. But the problem that we had when we were forced to go to Manatee and Southeast and Parramatta, and the thing that I thought was drastically unfair to most of the black kids, is that everyone expected the black kids to adjust to them. Everyone, the principals, the deans, and the teachers, but no one made an effort to adjust to the black kids. So as a result, there were many young kids' lives, I would say, were literally destroyed because of the mere fact that no one made an effort to help them make an adjustment. And some couldn't deal with the things. There were a lot of negative things happening. There were some good things happening also, but there were a lot of negative things happening, and it was always, the black kids, they had to take the brunt of it. But there were many kids that had to deal with things that they weren't capable of dealing with. So as a result, many of them dropped out of school, became violent about different things, but nobody tried to figure out what was the problem. Let's make some adjustments so that these kids can succeed, so that they can, but that was not the case.
Well, when we first came over, we didn't know how it was going to work out. So my thing was, you got to do the same things in Manatee that you were doing at Lincoln. You got to keep yourself hostile, agile, and mobile. And we're going to do the things, but that's no quarter, and we're going to give no quarter, and we're going to kill that same mosquito with an axe. We got to make adjustments. You can't be black and you can't be white. You just got to be a football player. And I tried to instill that in them, and a lot of them accepted it, and a lot of them fell by the wayside. Of course, it happened on both sides. A lot of the white stopped as well as a lot of the black stopped. First few days when we were supposed to come over here, the first day I was homesick with the flu. And Mr. Leith being principal, and he called me and told me, say, Eddie, I think you need to get over here. I said, well, I got the flu. He said, well, bring it with you. So I half dressed, I just slipped on something and came over here to the school, and when I got here, we was having a riot. I didn't know who was who. Black was white, and white was fighting black. So it just had a real turmoil. So I called the guys together, and I told the principal I needed to see all the fellas. So we went in the auditorium, and I said, all of you can leave with 6. I wanted 6 black, and I wanted 6 white. That gave me 12. Then everybody else left, so I told those fellas, I said, now we're gonna have to tie this school together. And then I had all the football boys to come in. If you played football, you come in and have a seat. I said, now we gonna have to tie the school together, football players. And I think this is the key to helping us integrate this school, because they helped stop the fighting, and it was kind of under control. It was telling the white, you can't do this, and the black was telling the black, you can't do this. Let's tie ourselves together and become a school. So there still was fighting. When I came back outside, we had a whole lot of the policemen and all around. So Mr. Leith was principal during that time. He said, what you think we ought to do? I said, let's close school for the weekend. So we went home Thursday, Friday, came back Monday morning, and I had a few guys that I had picked to help us do this. And one of the guys is here now, Henry Lawrence. He was in on this situation. He was one of the sparks that helped us do the integration. I had Jack Washington. I had a whole series of young men, and did the same thing with the white. I just had key guys, and those fellas helped us tie the school together.
We were playing Lakeland. The first play of the game, I was defensive end, and they did a flip, a pitch out, and the first thing I saw and the last thing I saw was the back of a jersey, and of course, the guy was tailing downfield, and of course we had a guy on our team by the name of Jack Washington that was a defensive back. He was a world-class sprinter too, and he came across field and went and got him. Of course, that sprinter was Ray Robinson, who was an Olympic sprinter in the Olympics. He ended up going to A&M with me, but the first play, and back then you didn't have the kind of scouting information that they have now, so nobody knew that we was playing against a 9-1 sprinter. So when they flipped the ball, the guy, boom. But they tried to play the next time, and of course I turned it in, but I heard somebody told me when I got sidelined that the coach said, get Lawrence out of there, he stinks. So I came out, and then they took me out. And then Coach Daniels, who's the defensive end coach, put me back in. He said, look, he says, you just that one play, so you're doing a good job putting you back in. So I went back in, played one play, and they took me out. And of course, I played no more. And that was kind of, knowing that this school was there, to take me up there. And it was, I never quite, was able to figure it out. So I sat, at the third game after the first series, I sat on the bench for the rest of the year. And the last game of the season, I went in about a minute, something left in the game. Somebody got hurt. But they benched me, and I was about 225. And they put a kid in about 150 pounds in my place. So I just, I dealt with that.
Well, the biggest problem we had during that time, I think the coach did the best he could do, because you couldn't play the boy because you knew his name. When we came over, the coach here had already had a team, and you're bringing a team over that had already been started. Everybody had been starting on both teams. Both white had been starting for this team, and the black had been starting for that team. Now the adjustment was going to have to be made. You try and play the best person you can. And a lot of times that didn't happen though. You didn't play the best player, you just play who you thought you could play. Well, a lot of times you find out you don't have a choice. And my adjustment was that I was following my boys. And I know I had to get their mind right to play and try and make the adjustments. So if I could adjust, then I could tell them what they could do in order to get themselves to adjust. I just couldn't be white at that time, and I couldn't be black. So I just fell in the lineup. I think my role when I got over here was to help tie the two schools together, the black and the white. That was my key role. I think the first year over here, I say we did the best we could do, because the white didn't understand the black, and the black didn't understand the white, and the coaches was about the same. They was afraid to talk to the black, and I, being the only black coach over here during that time, they accepted me. I think I was the go-between. I could say what I wanted to say to the black, and I could say what I wanted to say to the white, and they, some kind of way, they accepted me that way.
Well, the main thing is that looking at this field, the thought hits my mind is that, and looking at this tunnel, this is where it all started. I look down that sideline, and I see a very vivid image in my mind of Raymond Bellamy going down the sideline, reaching up with one hand, snatching a pass down. It was one of the most beautiful plays I've ever seen, even through my NFL career. Me seeing Willie Jones busting through the gap by the center and getting the quarterback before he can ever turn around. And I mean, seeing these images, some of the great players that, I mean, I just looking in awe, and just try to do my best to at least be worthy of playing out there on the field with them.
In the spring of 1969, the last class of Lincoln Memorial High School passed through its halls. And with its closing, the Fighting Trojan football team was no more. Gone were the Friday nights when the crisp, cool October air stirred young men into heroic feats on the football field. Gone were the Friday nights when trains would literally stop on their tracks to out-edge it. Brino, Pete, Leroy, Raymond, Duck, Hardy, Chip, Chili, and others worked their magic on the field. And at halftime, that high-stepping Trojan band do their thing. Those Friday nights when young men would gather together to say a prayer and then move through the tunnel into the bright lights of glory. Lincoln Memorial High School may be no more, but it did not disappear. It is there in our lives. And so, as long as a heart beats, so long as we remember, Lincoln Memorial High School remains forever in our dreams.